I thought we could speak about Ratha Yatra and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Ratha Yatra, which is a beautiful part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And my confirmation was as soon as I arrived, we saw Jagannath. So I felt very nice that yes, Jagannath is blessing us. So yeah, we will for the next 2 mornings just spend a little bit of time thinking about Ratha Yatra. How many of you have ever been to, I'm not going to say Birmingham Ratha Yatra. How many of you have ever been to Jagannath Puri Ratha Yatra? Okay, a few fortunate souls there. They say if you're fortunate enough to see the Ratha Yatra, then at the time of death, when all the images go through your mind, then the point where it comes to the image of seeing Lord Jagannath in the Ratha Yatra cart, it will stop there, and then you leave your body seeing Jagannath. So it's a very, very deep impression. It's one of the biggest, it is the biggest festival in the world actually. I think 1 million people come to Jagannath Ratha Yatra. And very, very deep significance of Ratha Yatra, and that's what we'll try to explore today. Of course, Lord Jagannath is the most, well, sometimes there is a debate amongst the Vaishnavas. Who is more merciful, Lord Chaitanya or Lord Jagannath? What do you think? Lord Chaitanya. See, she is a Sankirtan devotee, so she says Lord Chaitanya. What do you think, Jagannath or Lord Chaitanya? They say one resolution is that Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful avatar, but Lord Jagannath is the most merciful deity. So they're both the most merciful in their own categories. So Lord Jagannath, very, very merciful, very, very kind. Jagannath has very big eyes, which means he's always seeing the good, always seeing what service has been done. Lord Jagannath gives so much Mahaprasadam, isn't it? Very, very kind. Krishna Bodha Doya Moy, very kind. Gauribara Jiva Jai, giving us the opportunity to control our senses by giving so much mercy. And Lord Jagannath is also very, very kind because anyone can approach Jagannath. Even the so-called lower class are able to worship Lord Jagannath. And Lord Jagannath is also very kind because Lord Jagannath is said to be one of the most active deities. So many stories of how Lord Jagannath actively reciprocates in the life of the devotees. But perhaps the icing on the cake of why Lord Jagannath is the most merciful deity is because Lord Jagannath comes out. When we're so sick that we can't go to the hospital, then the ambulance has to come to us. And therefore, when in this age of Kali Yuga, when people are so spiritually kind of apathetic and they don't go to a place of worship, then the Lord comes out and says, okay, then I'll come and meet you where you are. And therefore, Lord Jagannath is coming out. Of course, when Srila Prabhupada took Jagannath Ratha Yatra all over the world, some of the pandas in Jagannath Puri were not happy, because it's a special day, it's a one-off day, and it can only really be done on this specific day. But Srila Prabhupada said Jagannath Ratha Yatra can be done any day. July, August, can be December, whenever you get permission, take Jagannath out. And Srila Prabhupada was trying in that way to give as much mercy as possible to the world. So today today and tomorrow we'll be looking at Ratha Yatra and its significance. Srila Prabhupada says here that it is a very ecstatic feeling, a very ecstatic festival. But those who are advanced devotees, they are the ones who will be able to relish it. So I also thought it's nice to discuss this because Ratha Yatra is coming and it's such a deep meditation. So we will discuss a little bit about this. But before we begin, we're going to talk about Ratha Yatra and the journey of Ratha Yatra. As we know, in the original journey of Ratha Yatra, it goes from the Jagannath temple all the way down the Grand Road to the Gundicha temple, and it's a very beautiful journey. But we are also going to look at the inner journey and the inner meaning. And this morning, just for one moment, what I want you to reflect on is your first memory in your life. Can you just, for one moment, just think about what's the earliest memory you have in your life? Maybe it was when you were 5 or 6 or 7 years old. What's the first thing that you remember? And then I want you to think about where you are now. That's been a long journey from where you were to where you are now. Some longer than others. We won't ask you how long the journey has been. Keep that one secret. But it's been a journey for sure. And along that journey, there have been many twists and turns, isn't it? Many things which changed your life, changed the direction of where you thought you were going. Many things have happened which were not in your plan, is it? Am I right? Yes. Many good things, many challenging things, many unexpected things. And therefore, what I want you to do, just for one moment, is turn to the person next to you, and what I want you to tell them is one thing in your life that happened which changed your life. However, it wasn't an event that you thought would change your life. So I don't want you to say like, I got married. Not that there's anything wrong with marriage, but you knew when you were getting married that was going to change your life. You knew that one, right? But maybe there were certain things that happened in your life which in that moment you didn't realize were so significant. But later on when you look back, you see, my God, that was a significant moment in my life. In the moment I didn't realize it, but later on. Can you think of something like that? Yeah? Can you share it with the person next to you or help each other to find that moment? I just want you to think about this for a moment. What are those unexpected things that happened in your life that changed it? Yeah? Go for 1 minute. You see many things which shaped your life. Anyone want to share something? It doesn't have to be your own, it can be your partner's. Anyone want to share anything that happened in your life that you never realized was so significant, or which then had a much deeper meaning or much deeper effect? Anyone? Yes, Girish.
I was
setting off the alarm this morning.
So I was fortunate to be part of the team that built the new road into the manor.
Oh, okay, wow.
So for me, it was the right time, right place, but we built that road in 5 days. So from start to finish, literally a team of 10 people got together, got contractors involved, built it, and then started to plant trees as well.
And why was that such a life-changing thing in your in your journey?
At the time, for me, at the time it was a road, but now it's the road that takes people to Krishna, and on the way back it takes you back home. So the significance of it is, you kind of, every time you reflect on it, it's not I did this. Krishna provided the opportunity for me to serve. And
wonderful.
That building that road.
I think deserves a round of applause for that. Every time I enter the manor gates, I'll be like, Girish ki jai. I'll be remembering you. Yeah, sometimes we do devotional service unknowingly, isn't it? We had one, all of you know His Grace Tribhuvanath Prabhu, and he would go to many festivals and do many Harinams, and he would say it's Krishna's trick, because they see you on the street and they just think Hari Hari, Krishna Krishna, and they just laugh and joke, but they don't realize Krishna is entering their life. So Krishna is in like a needle, out like a plow. 3 steps, just 3 steps. And then takes over your life. So yes, unknowing service sometimes that we do has such a great effect. Yeah, something else, an unknowing. Yes, Shita.
Maharaj, was a personal tragedy, and I just went. I was losing faith, so I just went and I prayed in front of the deity. That please show me the way. I want to have faith. That's long ago. In that moment, the moment I opened my eyes, one girl whom I did not know at that time was standing behind me, and she said, "Oh, there are Gita classes happening in the hostel. Would you like to attend?" And I started attending. That lady is now my spiritual mentor, and that's how I got connected to Krishna consciousness. So it was like a very direct answer.
Yeah.
And I had been upset because I lost a cousin very early on in life, someone whom I'd been attached to. The first class they were discussing how to take the death of a loved one. We were reading the second chapter, and where it all comes that soul is eternal. So I felt it was a very direct answer, and so whenever I think of Lord giving direct answers, I think of that moment as one of the things through the journey where something really happened in the moment and then it changed the whole course of my life. Because before that, I didn't even know about ISKCON. I was not thinking of being a Lord Krishna devotee very dedicatedly.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so the devotees, they come into our life and they really have an impact on us in ways in which we didn't know at that time. Yeah. Can anyone give us a more obscure event? These are still things which you knew in one sense were quite a great opportunity, but something very inconspicuous. Yeah.
I mean, I just remember the first moment I met my best friend in year 9. I was about 13 years old, and I just started to like Liverpool Football Club, and I could see. And I just saw him, and from the back, and under his shirt, he had Collymore, which was a football player.
Yeah, Collymore.
And so because of that, I just started to talk to him, and then we became like thick as thieves. And so he introduced me to music and hip. I was quite square, should we say, and he was naughty, really, really cheeky, naughty, bad. And so together we balanced each other out, and in hindsight, that shaped me. Shaped my
amazing.
My personality, I would say.
Yeah. If you look back in your life, actually, you can probably think of 3 to 5 people, and you're basically a combination of the association of these 3 to 5 people. You could probably do that and see that there are people who really shape you, who you are now, and we come in contact with different people by the will of Providence, and they really mold our personality. Thank you. Very nice. Yeah. One last one from the Mataji side. Anyone? Yeah. You've been volunteered.
That's really good. Okay, it's not that as deep.
No, we were sort of.
I was just saying that I was at university. I was interested in pursuing a career in journalism and real go-getting. I saw a poster that said volunteer at school. And I thought, that would be good for my CV. I'll go along. No interest at all in ever teaching. But when I went into the volunteering session, I just loved it, and that's where I decided to become a teacher. So it kind of shaped my career.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
Yeah. Things happen, and the reason thank you for sharing this. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because they say you have to live life going forwards, but sometimes you can only understand it going backwards. And one of the main things I want to share with you this morning is that there are visible events that happen in our life that we see with our eyes, that we experience in a very real way. But behind all of those events are sometimes invisible purposes. The idea that in our life, so many things are happening, but everything is actually teaching us something, everything is educating, evolving, and shaping us as a person in our spiritual journey. And the most advanced spiritualists, the most in-tune personalities, what they're able to do is at every moment try to understand what is the deeper thing which is going on here. Most people just look at visible events and they judge their life by visible events. But the deeper spiritualists, what they're able to do is with every visible event, they're able to see what deeper thing is going on. And so if we become more and more reflective like this, then we can see that Krishna's hand is always there, divine providence is always there. And this is not just true of our life, but this is also true of the Lord's life, the Lord's pastimes, the Lord's Leela. This is a map of India, and if we go along this map, we can see all the different places which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu traveled to. All of you know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world in 1486, And for 24 years, he mainly stayed in Navadvip, Mayapur, which many of you have visited. However, when he was 24, he took sannyas, and then he began traveling, because that's what sannyasis do. They keep moving, they keep the wheels turning. And in this way, he traveled to many, many different places. But it's not that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just traveled to different places, but each of these places and the things that he did in these places had a very, very deep underlying meaning. This is one very quick way in which you can kind of skim over Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. In the beginning, Mahaprabhu was born in Navadvip, the 9 islands, the 9 spiritual islands, and at the age of about 16, 17, 18, it's unclear, he took initiation, and then he came back and he started the Sankirtan movement on the streets of Nadia. And in that way, the Sankirtan movement began, and this is very much described in the Adi Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But then, after taking sannyas, then he went to Jagannath Puri very quickly, and from Jagannath Puri he then began to travel all over South India. For 2 years, 4,000 miles, he walked by foot, going to different places. Then later on, as he came back to Jagannath Puri and he journeyed to Vrindavan, then in that trip he stopped at Prayag and Varanasi, and here he met Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, and he had many, many talks with them and many, many exchanges. And then later on after that, at the age of 30, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came back to Jagannath Puri, and then he decided that I will not go anywhere else now. I will simply remain in Jagannath Puri. And then in the final days, in Jagannath Puri, he stayed in the Gambira, in a secluded place where he was experiencing the highest ecstasy. So we can say, event-wise, chronological-wise, this is basically the journey of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But remember, there are visible events, but there are deeper purposes behind each one of these things. And therefore, the deeper purpose we can say of Navadvip is this is where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was starting the Krishna consciousness movement. Then later on, in the next stage, he was spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. And then when he met Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, then he was structuring the Krishna consciousness movement, because he was teaching them all the different aspects of how to practice spiritual life. And then when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave all of that philosophy, then what he did is he came to Jagannath Puri, and here he was solidifying the Krishna consciousness movement, because he was teaching the devotees how to live, how to interact, what kind of character to have, the culture of Krishna consciousness. And then finally, he was savoring Krishna consciousness in the final stage of his life in the Gambira. So can you again see how we can read Chaitanya Charitamrita as a chronology of activities, but when you look deeper, there's also a very, very purposeful journey that's happening on a deeper level to fulfill the desire of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is to ultimately spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So today we're beginning by just reflecting on the external events and the deeper meanings. Remember, nothing happens by chance. The people you meet, the places you go to, the different experiences you have to encounter, these are not by chance. Everything is having a meaning. And for today and tomorrow, we are going to be discussing Ratha Yatra. And also the way that Ratha Yatra occurs in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is also not by chance. Before Ratha Yatra can take place, other things have to happen. And these other things that happen in the precursor to Ratha Yatra are also very much giving us insight into what has to happen in our own life in order to experience the ecstasy that Mahaprabhu experiences at Jagannath Rath Yatra. Before Jagannath Rath Yatra can take place, the first thing is there has to be Tirtha Yatra. All the devotees have to come to Jagannath Puri. Then once all of the devotees come to Jagannath Puri, the next thing that happens is Veda Kirtan. Before Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra happens, all the devotees go out on Sankirtan together in the 4 directions of Jagannath Puri. And that is also very, very significant. The next thing that has to happen before Jagannath Rath Yatra is Gundicha Marjan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates they go to the temple of Gundicha, where the Rath Yatra eventually ends, and first what they do is they clean that temple. And once these 3 things have happened, then Rath Yatra can take place. And therefore, this sequence of events leading to the Rath Yatra, leading to Jagannath Rath Yatra, are not just events that happen in the world, events that happen in the Leela. These events are also having a very, very deep meaning and a deep purpose. And when we think about Rath Yatra, not just as the external ecstasy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but the internal ecstasy of the soul, then we will realize what these things have to teach us before we can experience the inner ecstasy of the soul. So we'll be going through these 4 aspects of the pastime of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and in that way we'll be learning some lessons. Yeah, is that okay? Is everyone with me? Any questions so far? I think it's quite clear. Yeah? Okay, good. So let us begin. The first thing that has to happen before Rath Yatra can take place. Think of Rath Yatra as ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy. Before that can take place, before there's even any chance of having that kind of experience, the first thing is there is Tirtha Yatra. What does this mean? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as I mentioned, he travels all across South India. He goes to many, many different places, but then finally he comes back to Jagannath Puri. Jagannath Puri is a very, very important place in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes for an external reason and for an internal reason as well. Jagannath Puri externally is very, very important because Jagannath Puri, as I mentioned, is the place where Rath Yatra takes place, and it's the place where the whole of India comes on one day. All eyes of India are on Jagannath Puri on this day of Rath Yatra. And therefore the external reason why Rath Yatra or Jagannath Puri is so important for Mahaprabhu is because in one place he can basically contact the whole of India in one day, in one place. And therefore, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants to spread Krishna consciousness, the external reason is that Jagannath Puri gives him an opportunity to spread that influence, that spiritual influence in a very, very powerful way. Jagannath Puri is also the place that his mother requested him to stay in, because when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas, then his mother had a deep fear that he would go to Vrindavan. When he took sannyas, she knew he can't stay at home because a sannyasi cannot stay at home. But then she requested, at least you can stay at Jagannath Puri, because Puri and Navadvip are like 2 rooms in the same house. So even though you will be living away from home, at least devotees are always going from Puri to Navadvip back and forth all the time, so at least I'll receive news of you. If you go to Vrindavan, I won't even know where you are, what you're doing. So his mother requested him, you please stay in Jagannath Puri. So then he agreed to stay in Jagannath Puri, and that really was the external reason. The internal reason why Jagannath Puri is so important is because every dham or every holy place has a speciality. So Vrindavan is known as Madhurya Dham, the place of sweetness. Navadvip Dham is known as Audarya Dham, or the place of great magnanimity, or the great place of mercy. It's said that just by lying down in Navadvip is like paying obeisances. Don't go there and sleep all day, but Mahaprabhu is always seeing the good. Oh, just see, they are lying down, they're paying obeisances. Very, very kind, very, very magnanimous. But Jagannath Puri is known as Viraha Kshetra. Viraha or Vipralamba means separation. So it's a very, very profound place, because in this place Krishna is experiencing great separation. Because Krishna in this form of Jagannath has very big eyes, has stunted limbs. And this form of Krishna is the form of Krishna experiencing great separation away from Sri Vrindavan Dham. And therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu decided to go to Jagannath Puri and spend time there, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to experience what is that inner ecstasy of love between Radha and Krishna. And so Jagannath represents Krishna, who's completely in ecstasy, in separation from Srimati Radharani. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu represents Radharani, who is in deep separation from Krishna. And therefore, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in separation from Krishna, and Jagannath, in separation from Radharani, come together in Jagannath Puri, then it's a big explosion. And therefore, Jagannath Puri becomes a very, very important place. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes there, and as he prepares for Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra, there cannot be a festival. There cannot be a festival of ecstasy without the association of devotees. The most important ingredient in any festival, in any celebration, in any retreat, is not the sound system, is not the instruments, is not even the prasadam, not even in the weather. It's the association of devotees. Because if all of those things are absent, but you have the devotees, beautiful devotees, enthusiastic devotees, then everything takes off. And if you have all the arrangements but no devotees, then there is no ecstasy. And therefore, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to Jagannath Puri, then everyone in Jagannath Puri is overwhelmed. Oh, Mahaprabhu has come back. So they all come to meet him. And they're glorifying him and expressing their appreciation that he's come back. And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, on his tour of South India, there was his servant who got into trouble because he got allured by some ladies. And who was that servant? Kala Krishna Das. And so as Mahaprabhu is meeting all the Jagannath Puri devotees, and then Kala Krishna Das, he looks at Kala Krishna Das and he says, and this person, he came with me. All of you were in separation from me, but he was with me. He was associating with me, but he got allured, he got deviated, he got distracted, he got degraded while on this journey, and therefore I don't want to see him anymore. But the devotees were very, very kind. They said, no, he made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. That's the way life goes. Let us at least try and keep him in service. And therefore the devotees decided, okay, Kala Krishna Das, you can do one service. The Lord is banishing you, but we will send you to Navadvip, because you can inform all the Bengali Vaishnavas, all the Navadvip Vaishnavas, that Mahaprabhu has come to Jagannath Puri and Rath Yatra is about to take place. So all of you, please come to Jagannath Puri. So Kala Krishna Das goes and he meets Sachi Mata and all the Advaita Acharya and others, and he says, I've come with some good news. What's your good news? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come back from his travels and he's in Jagannath Puri and he's inviting all of you to come. And without a blink of an eyelid, they drop everything, and all the devotees from Navadvip begin to journey to Jagannath Puri. It's said that about 200 of them came, and they journeyed together and they came to Jagannath Puri. And when they entered Jagannath Puri, you see devotees, when they go from place to place, they don't just walk from one place to the next place. They do Harinam from one place to the next place. So all of these Bengali Vaishnavas, they came into Jagannath Puri doing Nam Sankirtan. And the king of Orissa at that time, Prataparudra, he was standing on the balcony, and when he saw all the devotees arrive from Navadvip into Jagannath Puri, he was amazed. He was like, who are these people? Their singing is so sweet. Their dancing is so elegant. Their effulgence is so blinding. And just by looking at their eyes and their disposition, they just look so saintly. I've never seen any people like this. What is this I'm seeing? What is this I'm hearing? He turns to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And then Bhattacharya says very beautifully, Bhattacharya kohe e madhura vachan, chaitanya shrishti e prem sankirtan. Bhattacharya kohe, the Bhattacharya said, E madhura vachan, this sweet sound that you're hearing, Chaitanya Shrishti, this is not a creation of this world. This is a very special creation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. E Prem Sankirtan. This is chanting the holy names of Krishna in pure love. And so Bhattacharya was telling him that these are very, very special people. These devotees are not ordinary. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was introducing each one of them to Prataparudra. This is this person, this is this person. And then as soon as all the devotees from Navadvip arrived, then the first thing they did, you can see here in the picture, they went to Kasi Mishra's home where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was staying, and there together, they got together. They immediately had very, very beautiful association. And when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw all of the devotees, he became so happy and he began glorifying them. Bhaktera mahima prabhu kohite panchamukh, Bhaktera mahima kohite hoya panchamukh. It said that when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking the glories of the devotees, then it's as though he had 5 mouths, kohita payasuk. He was so happy to talk about their glories. So each one, he was looking at each one of the devotees and he was finding their amazing quality, seeing that each one of them had some special thing that was given to them by Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw that every Vaishnav is special, that every Vaishnav is valuable, that every Vaishnav is like a candle in a dark Kali Yuga, and therefore every Vaishnav must be valued. He looked at Vasudev Datta and he said, Vasudev Datta was an amazing devotee because he had so much compassion. He said, I want to take on all the sinful reactions of everyone so that they can be relieved and so that they can go back home, back to Godhead. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looked at Vasudev Datta and he said, Vasudev Datta has purchased me by his compassion, and if he likes, Vasudev Datta can sell me in the marketplace because he has conquered my heart. He's purchased me by his compassion. Mahaprabhu looked at Vakreshwara Pandit. Later on he said, he's so enthusiastic. When he begins dancing, he doesn't stop. For 3 days non-stop, Vakreshwara Pandit dances. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu looks at Vakreshwara Pandit and he says, Vakreshwara Pandit, you are like one wing, and if I had one more devotee like you, I would be able to fly in the sky. He was so touched by Vakreshwara Pandit's enthusiasm. Later on in Mahaprabhu's pastime, he glorifies Ramananda Rai. He says, you are Tumi eka batul, ami dvitiya batul, ataeva amai tamai hoya samatul. He says, Ramananda, you are like one madman, and I am like a second madman. And when we get together, we're completely on the same wavelength and we can discuss Krishna Katha in great relish. So like this, everyone was so much glorified by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And here what we're learning is one of the first aspects of spiritual life, that unless and until we learn to relish the association of the devotees, unless we understand and can fully appreciate that this Sangha, this ability to have time together, this ability to serve each other, this opportunity to learn and hear from each other, unless we value this, spiritual ecstasy cannot come about. No one can experience spiritual ecstasy in a vacuum. Spiritual ecstasy is only Majjita Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parashparam Katayantas Chamam Nityam Tushyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. Krishna says when the devotees come together, they experience great happiness because they know how to connect and how to help each other awaken spiritual emotion. So the first lesson as we go on Ratha Yatra, towards Ratha Yatra, is that the ecstasy of Ratha Yatra cannot happen unless we have the Sangha of the devotees. I'm going to show you a verse. This is this verse always stick in my mind for a couple of reasons. The first reason this verse is very special is because this is one of the only two verses in the Bhagavatam which is repeated twice. This is a very famous verse that is only one of two verses repeated twice. But it's also a very special verse because something very special happened with this verse. Many of you know Shruti Dharma Prabhu, very wonderful devotee. And in 2020 he passed away from this world just before Gaur Purnima. And what happened is that was a great loss for the devotees because he was such a wonderful devotee, so encouraging, so empowering, so dedicated, such an inspiring example. So it was a great loss. And 1 year passed, and I remember on the morning of the anniversary of him passing away, I woke up in the morning, I woke up very early, kind of like today. I didn't set the alarm off that time, but I woke up very early, and then I went down in the manor, for some of you who know, we have a patron office, and in the patron office there's a big picture of him. So I was sitting there on that morning of this first anniversary of him passing away, and I was remembering him. And then I was chanting my rounds. I went down for Mangalarati. I came back up to the room and I was chanting my rounds, looking at him. And then I went down for the Bhagavatam class, and it was amazing because that day on the Bhagavatam class was this, somehow in the sequence of verses, it came to this verse, this very special verse that is only one of only two verses repeated. And this verse is very special. And I found it very significant that this verse would appear on his, on the anniversary of his disappearance. So you can repeat it after me. Tulaya malavenapi Nasvargam na punarbhavam Bhagavati Sangi Sangasya Atyanam Kimuta Shishaha. So this verse somehow or other was the verse for the day on the first anniversary disappearance of Sri Dharma Prabhu, a very famous verse in the Bhagavatam. And this was the verse. The value of a moment's association with a devotee of the Lord cannot be compared even with the value of attaining the heavenly planets or liberation from matter, and what to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are meant for death. So this is a very special verse talking about how the association of the devotees is so valuable. So today I wanted to begin just by helping us meditate on that a little bit and helping us to ask ourselves the question, what can we do in our life to connect better with the devotees? What can we do in our life to create better community? What can we do so that we can create these spiritual relationships? If I would say one asset in your spiritual life, which is the greatest asset, it's the relationships you have with the other Vaishnavas. The genuine, deep, heartfelt relationships of love. These are the relationships that will help you to awaken love for Krishna. And relationships only work where there is selflessness. And so, we won't have time to do this today, but oftentimes we do exercises like this, and maybe you may want to think of doing this weekend. Maybe sit somewhere in the quiet and really think about this deeply, that the relationships you have with devotees and the relationships in general in life are your greatest asset, and the depth of the relationship will only be dependent on how selfless that relationship is. In our life, we're basically trying to go from selfishness to selflessness. And that's a long journey. And along that journey, the constant question we have to be asking ourselves is, in every relationship, how can I become less selfish and more selfless? So you can think for a moment this weekend in your relationship with your spouse, with your parents, with your children, with a friend, with work colleagues, with other devotees, with your own spiritual master, and even with Krishna. Can you write down one activity you could do, one thing you could do differently in every single one of those relationships? Don't make it a big thing, otherwise it will be difficult to sustain. But even a small thing that you could do in each one of those relationships, and I guarantee you, you will begin to see how those relationships begin to flourish. Yeah. Whenever you reflect on someone who recalls their friendship with someone, if you think about anyone who's ever reflected about a friendship they have with someone, basically what has basically touched their heart in that relationship is how that person expressed their lack of selfishness and the substance of their selflessness. This is what touches people's heart. This is what people remember, and this is what leaves an impression on them. And therefore, sometimes because we're not able to automatically do this because we're so caught up and so busy in many things we're doing, having a little table like this where you reflect and deeply think about this and revisit it to remind yourself, it can help you to have much deeper relationships with others. Maybe I'm just going to ask you for 1 minute just to think about, look at this table and you can pick any column and you can pick any row and just give us an answer for one thing you could do to be less selfish or one thing you could do to be more selfless in one of these relationships. Can you think about one thing you could do just to deepen the connection, and just share that with the person next to you just for 1 minute? Just because I want you to think about this a little bit. Just go ahead. So anyone would like to share something? Let's start with the being less selfish. Let's start with being less selfish. Anything you could do, any small things you could do tomorrow to be less selfish in any of these relationships? Yeah. Who is the relationship with first?
It fits with all
of them, okay.
Yeah. We both kind of have the same. It's to be more consciously present in our relationships. And that means for us not to just because we're kind of in that mindset, especially for myself, that I just want to get things done.
Yeah.
I don't really want to. I just want to kind of do something, do a task, and just get it done and move on.
Yeah.
Whether it's someone speaking about their feelings to me or not, I just want to kind of just hear it and give them a solution and move on to the next thing. So I think.
So be present in all interactions. They say the greatest gift you can give someone is your own attention. So yeah, that's a really, really important thing. Imagine we could just develop that as a habit, that whenever I'm having a conversation with someone, everything else to one side. Give that person the best of your attention, the best of your time, and you'll be amazed how such a simple thing like that makes your relationship with someone so much deeper. Because it means so much to someone when you give them your undivided attention. So don't be constantly self-absorbed when with others. Give them your time generously. Yeah, anything else you can do to be less selfish in the relationship? Yes, at the back.
I wouldn't know whether to call it less selfish, but probably a relationship with God, Krishna. I would say to him, I want you. I want none other than you. I don't want to ask anything else. But equally, you also be available to others.
Yes, okay. Very good, yes. What I want you to also think about is sometimes these are very high aspirations, and of course we should express those aspirations, but what could you do today or tomorrow which is very easy to implement, that would begin to show to Krishna that you only want Krishna or you only want devotional life? What practical thing could you do to show that? Because oftentimes what happens in Krishna consciousness is we have very high ideals, but we don't have practical things in a small way that we do every single day that basically begin to engender that ideal in our life. And what happens is we can go through our whole spiritual life with very high prayers and ideals of what we want, but on a day-to-day level, what are we doing to implement that and to begin to live that kind of mindset? You see what I'm saying? That's why I'm doing these kind of exercises with you, because unless we consciously think about this, Krishna consciousness remains very ethereal, very theoretical, very philosophical, but we want to live this, we want to actually practice this, yeah? Anything else you can do? Yes?
Chant attentively.
Chant attentively, yes? Okay, so you're bringing the point of attention again, yes?
It's less selfish, like I can say, like from my realization, before we were, like I was praying for like my desire, like oh it's good to fulfill like this desire. But now I'm asking for other people, they can get the benefit, or they, like for the woman, like I just say like the woman not suffer, they are suffering.
That's
so
very
much.
nice, yeah.
So I'm always pray for the women, they don't suffer, like every single day for every girl, so I am more selfless, like before, like to be honest, when I went Harinam before, when I newly joined, that time I went Harinam, so sometimes I go for shopping, so 3 hours for a Harinam, so sometimes 1 hour I go for shopping and then I join. And that time my husband was telling me you have to be fully surrendered to your service. But now my consciousness is now raised, and now I think now selfless service I want to do, the 3 hours I want to dedicate it the
very
Harinam
nice, yes.
service. So
it's such a nice point you raise, Srila Prabhupada signed off his letters, your ever well-wisher, which means he was always wishing others well. And one devotee once said something to me which, yeah, thankfully somehow I still managed to do. He says, whenever you go in front of the deities and you have many prayers, as part of that prayer you should always pray for one person, pray for one other person. In other words, make a prayer for someone else. And that's just immediately it begins to shift your mindset, that it's not just me, I'm also praying for someone else. It's a very, very beautiful thing. So yes, pray for someone else. Yes?
I find that often when you're relating with people they let you know what it is they like from you, but it's easy to just overlook that and ignore it. It might be a simple thing, like someone might say, like my mum might say, I'd love it if you rang me once a week.
Yeah.
But again, do those things because again,
Yeah.
Listening to what people in our lives are asking from us.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's beautiful. So people will let you know. Keep your ears open. Keep your eyes open. See what's important to someone. And then try to, without them even asking you, deliver that to them. It was funny, once I was giving a talk and I was just talking about how material desires, and I just said like, I just made a comment, I just said like, yeah, and sometimes you wake up in the morning and you do just want to eat a Kit Kat. And the next week I got like 20 Kit Kats. No, I wasn't saying it literally like, but it was so nice, it was so touching that you said something and you're like, wow, these people are really listening. They're really like, you know, they took it serious, you know. No Kit Kats. You know? But it's so nice when you express something and then someone's actually picking up on it. You feel like, wow, that's a real relationship. So yeah, that's a beautiful one, thank you. And something you could do to be more selfless in any of these relationships? Yeah, Birchandra.
Yes, actually, so recently my wife was serving me food, prashadam, and she said to me, it's because I was busy with the service and with work, and she said to me, sometime it would be nice for you to also serve me. And then when I actually...
In the most humble way possible.
It was quite humbling because she's always, you know, serving me, you know, quite a lot. And basically I thought, okay, she's also a Vaishnava, you just want to serve me like a Vaishnava. So I apologized and then I said, okay, I'll make more of an endeavor to serve me also.
Yeah.
So my meditation was to actually be more serving and less selfish.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on
Thank you.
Just meditate.
Yeah. Don't just meditate on it, yeah, do it.
So just meditate on it.
But it's a nice point that whatever, another very beautiful thing is whatever selfless things people do for you, to just think like, it's my duty to do that same selfless act for someone else, whether that person or another person. Whatever you receive, you always pay that on and you give that. If something has touched your heart, then do that and touch someone else's heart in the same way. And when you do that, it's very, very beautiful. It creates a real, yeah, nice. Yeah, so like this, what we're doing is, we're just reflecting on this a little bit. And really this weekend, try to reflect on this. Like, Ratha Yatra begins with relationships, all the devotees coming together. And what we're finding oftentimes in our communities is that everyone is together, but there's a lot of loneliness in the crowd, or there's a lot of disconnection, or there's a lot of distance, even though we're very, very close together in the same vicinity. So let us really think about how we can have closer hearts, closer bonds, and closer relationships. And this really is by becoming more and more conscious of the other person and not constantly meditating on ourselves. I'm just going to pause here and see whether anyone has any questions or anything they'd like to ask or just clarify on anything I've said so far. Yes?
Maharaj, you said, you know, with the selflessness thing, sometimes we do want to do this, but time comes in it becomes a big factor.
Yeah. Yeah, time is always difficult. There's so many things we'd like to do, so many things we'd like to offer. The question was that sometimes there's so things we'd like to do selflessly, but we don't have time. You know, sometimes, like what I would say is, find ways to be selfless which don't take any extra time. There are also ways in which, if you're selfless, you can actually save time as well. So sometimes we always think of being selfless as an extra activity that we have to do that takes part of our day. But when you think about selflessness in a deeper way, you'll actually find that if you're more selfless, actually it will save you time. Can anyone give me an example of how a selfless act you do could actually, far from taking more of your time, could actually save you time and make your life? Yeah, Ramna. Yeah.
What you do, everything.
Okay, yeah, so sometimes by doing a selfless act and investing in something in the short term, it saves you a lot in the long term. Yeah. Can you give me a practical example in a Vaishnava relationship of how being selfless wouldn't take you any extra time? Yeah, Nihal.
If my friend is like mother is sick or something and I can't go all the way to the hospital, my mother on the other side of the country, I can at least send some flowers, someone else can deliver that as a little gesture, a little small note.
Okay, so that just requires a phone call. Yeah, but still that phone call requires a bit of extra time. I may not have time to make that phone call. I'm losing time. Yeah.
I guess, for example, if you're doing a particular service,
Mm-hmm.
allowing somebody else to maybe take part in that service or do that service for that day, because it'll take something away from you, but you can also give it to somebody else and stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Imagine like sometimes there's a service that someone really, really wants to do and you're really, really attached to also doing that service, but you say like, no, I'll be selfless. I'll give that person the opportunity to serve. Boom. They got an opportunity, you got more time. So it's not that being selfless every time means that it's taking more time. If we have the mood of wanting to be selfless, we'll find opportunities in every situation to be selfless. Yeah. Someone wanted to say something else? Okay. But that was a really good example. So let us think how it can become part of us. And actually the more you're meditating on it, the more Krishna will provide more and more opportunities for it to happen. Yeah. Thank you.
Maharaj, I've got another question.
Yes. Yes.
If somebody is being selfish or trying to take advantage of you,
Mm-hmm.
recognize that you are in a compromised position. Sometimes being selfless with wanting to serve them to the best of your capacity, but it doesn't always happen because you feel that I'm being cheated here.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, how do you, because in a relationship sometimes, we find ourselves, we cannot escape, but, at the same time it doesn't feel right. So it's very difficult to be selfless in those sort of situations.
Yeah, sometimes being selfless in a situation like that means to correct someone, to act in a way in which they see. To be selfless doesn't mean to be passive. To be selfless means to always be thinking about what is the best for the other person. So sometimes if someone is acting inappropriately towards you, then the best for that person is not that you just passively accept it, but the best for that person is that somehow, in some ingenious way, you help that person to understand that maybe this is not the best way to do it. And therefore, being selfless means you use your intelligence and you see how to navigate a relationship in order to uplift and empower and help that person improve. So, we need to have a more rounded understanding of what being selfless means. It doesn't just mean being passive and accepting everything, but it means to always act in the interest of others. And in every situation, how you express your selflessness may vary. It may have to be adjusted like that. Yeah. Any other questions on Vaishnava Sangha, on community, on how to have better relationships? Remember, this is the foundation. Without this, Ratha Yatra cannot take place. The inner ecstasy cannot happen. So, anything else you would like to ask on this? It's pretty clear. Yeah.
I was just thinking, how would you be able to deal with something that, for example, if a Vaishnava or anyone was to kind of really upset you, what would be the best way around dealing with that situation?
So if someone really upsets you, if someone really, really disturbs you, then what would be the best way to deal with that situation? Yeah. The first thing is that when we have emotions and when we feel bad or when we feel hurt, it's very, very important to try to process that. And different people process it in different ways. But it helps to talk to someone who's outside of your own emotional kind of turmoil. That's the first thing. Because it's difficult to see the picture when you're inside the frame. So when you feel hurt or when you feel that you've been mistreated, then one of the first things to do is go to someone who knows you, who has spiritual advancement, who can maintain confidentiality, and try to speak about that. They may be able to give you perspectives of the other person that you never saw. They may be able to help you understand how even in this there are many, many gifts that you're getting, and they may be able to give you some advice which can help you to not just get through it, but also to grow through it and to improve and to elevate yourself. So that's why it's so important to have good friends who you can speak to. And oftentimes what we do when we're hurt is we don't speak, we don't express it, or we express it in the wrong way, in a way in which creates more division or creates more animosity. So it must be digested, otherwise it just stays there and it keeps churning. So we must digest it and process it and get what we need to get from it, and then move on like that and let go. Yeah, many people in their life are holding a lot of negativity from relationships of the past, and therefore they're carrying a big burden, and therefore they're not able to freely move in this life because they haven't let go of emotions. So it's very important to be able to process it in that way.
Would it be the same if it's a repetitive issue?
If it's a repetitive issue, yeah, then it may require some more involved mediation or some more involved speaking with someone to try to raise something in an appropriate way. And then if that doesn't work, then maybe some healthy distance. So begin by expressing your emotions, and then if it gets more severe, try to have some kind of mediation. And if that doesn't work, then sometimes we just have to say, keep a respectful distance and continue on until there is opportunity to have relationship like that. So we can take progressively more involved action.
Thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah. 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes left. Okay, so then I think it's not so good for me to go on to the next part. So then maybe I'll stop here, and then maybe just if there are one or two more questions. Do you have a question? No? Yeah. Okay, so we've got one here, and then we'll go to... Yeah.
I can go after.
Yeah, you can go, it's fine.
My question is about how inculcating this value of selflessness in children.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, we did a lot of things out of either fear or respect for our parents. But now the times have changed so much. Children are, parents are treated more as friends now, rather than, that kind of, most importantly, I would say fear or respect that, he's the head of the family. That is different. It's like, father and mother both are friends. And children are so distracted nowadays. They are less observant as to what's happening in the family or people visiting. So how can we inculcate this value of selflessness in them? Because when I was growing up, I did the things because I had to do it, and then I realized the value of that later. Now I realize it was so useful to do those things when I was little, because it just got me into the habit of doing things for others. How can we do that?
Yeah, maybe all of you would have more experience, but I think you see children, I think they need to be inspired into selflessness. They need to experience why that's such a beautiful thing, why doing that really moves the heart in a different way. Just like, it was very nice, we were just in East Africa, and it was very nice because in East Africa you get all the extremes. So like one day I was in like a corporate commercial bank doing a program, and the next day we were in the slums. And what we did is one day we went out into the slums of Nairobi, and we took many of the young, the youth, and we went to like a makeshift school. We did a kirtan, we did a program, we distributed prasadam, and I think it was just amazing for them to come out and do that, and be in touch with reality and reach out to people who are less fortunate. And I think those kind of experiences create a very deep impression on children. Like now in the manor, one of the biggest things is kids sankirtan. So they take the kids out on door to door, and the kids do like bigger than everyone. And it's amazing because they come here, they come face to face with reality. Here they come face to face with people. They get out of their own head and they really learn to be givers. And so I think there's a lot we can be doing with children to give them inspiring experiences. It's not just about telling them, be selfless, be selfless. It's about giving them an opportunity to experience why that's such a beautiful thing to do. And why, if you do that, your life becomes beautiful. So I remember even as a kid, I had the opportunity to go out and do these kind of activities, and it really left a deep impression on my heart. And I was like, yeah, in my life, in the future, I want to do this on a bigger scale. And so I think if we do that, it will be. It was just an idea. I'm sure there are many others in parenting, more. But yeah.
I was just curious about the quote, on the first slide that you had.
Yes. This one? The initial quote.
Yeah, Bhagavan is saying that it's a very ecstatic feeling. Those who are advanced devotees, they can enjoy. So I was just wondering, what about those who are not advanced? What's really going on with them? What are they feeling? What sort of hope, and what's the journey for someone who's not advanced in that field?
I think anyone who goes to Ratha Yatra has a good time, right? Like, it doesn't matter who you are. If you are the person standing by, it's just like, it's like this. Krishna consciousness is like an ocean. So some people enjoy the ocean. We were just on Mombasa, Niali Beach, so it's fresh in my mind. Some people enjoy the ocean just by watching it from the shore, from the beach. Some people enjoy the ocean by just dipping their feet in. Some people enjoy the ocean by then going in and swimming and being surrounded by the ocean but still on the surface. And some people enjoy the ocean by diving deep and getting the jewels. So we can say in one sense all of them are enjoying the ocean. But the level of enjoyment is of a different depth. The level of enjoyment is of a different intensity. And their level of enjoyment is immersing their consciousness in a different way. And therefore, it's not that others cannot relish Ratha Yatra. They can relish Ratha Yatra. Everyone does. But what is the depth of that relish? If you really want to understand the depth of Ratha Yatra, then we need to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. We need to understand what was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seeing, what was he feeling, what was he experiencing when he saw Jagannath. Why was he crying? Why was tears coming out of his eyes like a syringe? What was the pastime behind it? And when we begin to understand this deeper understanding of what Ratha Yatra is, then when we go to that festival, we won't just be hearing a good kirtan or experiencing a great, colorful, cultural show, but we'll be actually understanding this is the deepest exchange. This is just such a profound, intimate exhibition of divine love that's going on. But who has that vision to see? Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, only one who is advanced, only one who has actually grasped the knowledge and the vision of Ratha Yatra from the eyes of Chaitanya Charitamrita, they will be able to experience what this ecstasy really is. You see, two people can be in a kirtan and they can both find it ecstatic, but for one person it can be music, and for another person it's the holy name. So both are experiencing, but they're on different levels of spiritual, sensual experience.
Thank
you. Yes?
Normally I kind of advise whomever speaks to be more selfless and serve selflessly, but my question is, when someone is selflessly serving persistently
all the time in a relationship. Sometimes it can create an emotional void
Mm.
and a hollowness, an emptiness. And most of the people who come to me and ask me, how do I fill it? And I say, talk to friends, make friendships, do other things. What would any tips or strategies that you would recommend, Maharaj, to fill that emotional void?
Yeah, there are some relationships in which you feel like you're just giving, and you're not getting any reciprocation. And then in an advanced stage, actually the one who is giving is actually feeling that in their giving they're receiving. It's not the receiving back from the other person that's the reward. In an advanced stage, the person feels that the very act of giving is receiving. But that's a very advanced stage. And therefore, what we recommend people is that, there will be some relationships in which you feel like you're giving, but not receiving. Therefore, make sure there are other relationships in which you are receiving inspiration, receiving encouragement, receiving spiritual strength. And that means other relationships with Vaishnavas, which are very positive and which are very healthy. And ultimately the relationship with Krishna. Because if you're Krishna, as your relationship, as you become more and more nourished in your vertical relationship with Krishna, then you will be able to give selflessly in your horizontal relationships in this world, because you're drawing from a deeper source. And so, there will be relationships in this world in which we feel like this person is not appreciating, but instead of just cutting off those relationships, we should realize that even those relationships are valuable because they're giving me a chance to be selfless in this way. And the other relationships are giving me the spiritual strength to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah, Haripriya.
I was wondering, how do we avoid trying to focusing on like the negative aspects of in relationships or with certain people, because I feel like that's what prevents me from being selfless sometimes, because I could focus on the negative in people. So how do we kind of steer away from that and focus on the positive aspects of them?
Yeah, so there are many negative aspects in people, and we tend to highlight that, and that becomes big in our consciousness, and then it's difficult to just be selfless with them. One really important thing, there's one management book and it's called Catch Your People Doing Something Right. And the idea is that generally in relationships, the reason why faults become bigger than good qualities is because in relationships what happens is when someone makes a fault or does something wrong, we tend to vocalize it. We speak to someone else about it, or we speak to them about it. And when you vocalize something, it becomes bigger. But generally, when someone does something good, we just kind of make a mental note and we're like, yeah, that was good, I'm sorry. We don't really thank them for it, or we don't really express it to someone else, or we don't really share that. And so, if we develop this culture where whenever we say something or we feel there's something bad, we always try to look for something good at the same time. Or when you see someone do something good, don't just make a mental note, thank them for it, vocalize it. What happens is you begin developing a mentality in which the good becomes just as prominent as if there are some difficult things there. So that is a gracious Vaishnava has to begin to do that. Begin to see the good in others. And beginning to see the good means to actually vocalize it and to actually share that good with others. And then you'll have a much more balanced vision. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing is when we see faults in others, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, when you see faults in others, try to see whether you have that same fault in yourself, because most likely whatever we see is within ourselves as well. And then what happens is if we're humble and reflective and introspective enough to do that we see, yeah, this person has this, but maybe I also have a bit of that, and maybe I've done that, then you don't kind of see I'm there and they're there, but you kind of like, yeah, we're both kind of here and we're both struggling, so why don't we just help each other? And in that way we stop seeing ourselves as higher or better than others, and we see that we're all struggling and therefore we all have to help each other like that. So yeah, I guess these are a couple of things and they can be implemented. Yeah. Okay, we'll take the last question from Chakradharipu.
Thank you, Maharaj. You said about external reasons of Ratha Yatra. When you came to the internal reasons of Ratha, apologize for the lack of my attention. You said about explosion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Can you just explain that once more, Maharaj?
Yeah, so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in everything he does in his Leela, there is an internal purpose and an external purpose. So the overriding external purpose of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is to spread the Sankirtan movement, and the overriding internal purpose of Mahaprabhu is to experience the love of Srimati Radharani. So therefore you find in everything Mahaprabhu does, these two purposes are there. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to South India. Why? For an external purpose, to spread Krishna consciousness. But for the internal purpose, because he wants to meet certain devotees like Ramananda Rai and experience what is the love of Radharani for Krishna. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes sannyas, it has an external purpose. He wants to just travel and preach and spread the Krishna consciousness movement. But sannyas also has an inner meaning, because sannyas means vyavasayatmika buddhi. You just forget everything and you're just one pointed focus, like the gopis of Vrindavan on Krishna. So it helps in his internal purpose. And similarly, when he does Ratha Yatra, the external purpose is everyone comes to Ratha Yatra, so he can preach in an incredible way. But the internal purpose is, what does Ratha Yatra mean, which later on we'll talk about. It's the meeting of Krishna and the Brajabasis in Kurukshetra. And Radharani is in an extreme separation at that time, because she's seeing Krishna after many, many years. And she's seeing her beloved, but still she's feeling that I cannot exchange my heart with Krishna in the way I'd want to, because you are the same Krishna, I'm the same Srimati Radharani, but we're in a completely different setting, in a completely different role. And therefore, Krishna, I want to take you back to Vrindavan. I really want you to come back to Vrindavan so we can experience this love again. And so that Ratha Yatra is the pulling of Krishna from Kurukshetra back to Vrindavan in the intense love of Srimati Radharani, who wants to have those pastimes again. And that's the internal meaning of Ratha Yatra. So Mahaprabhu is crying, and externally, just like everyone is being inundated in Nam Sankirtan, and as he's crying, those tears are carrying the Radha Bhav of Srimati Radharani wanting to experience that love with Krishna, and he's experiencing that. So both things are going on side by side. Is that okay? Alright, so thank you so much. So we've begun talking about Ratha Yatra. It begins with all the devotees coming to Jagannath Puri, and today we reflected on how that refers to Sadhu Sangha, the association of devotees, and if we can create that very deep bond of selfless exchange. And then tomorrow we'll look at the other steps which then lead up to Ratha Yatra.